Hey everybody, this is Jeremy with Patrick & Friends Music Company. Today we're going to talk about orchestrating your ideas around the kit. What we're going to do is we're going to take a simple idea, in this case the paradiddle, and we're going to find different ways to voice it around the different drums. Hopefully this is going to give you guys some inspiration and some strategies on how to take your own ideas and keep them fresh and interesting. This is actually the second video in our series on how to get the most out of your drumming vocabulary. I personally am constantly finding myself getting bored of playing the same licks over and over and over again. And I know I'm not alone. If you feel this way, I hope that this video series will give you the creative tools to overcome that. If you haven't yet, I highly suggest you check out the first video in this series. And if you want access to all these videos and a lot more content, I highly recommend you go check out the Patrick & Friends Music Company Patreon. Link will be down in the description. All right, let's talk orchestration. There are a couple different ways you can approach this, and it kind of depends on what sticking you're working with. A good place to start is thinking about what makes this sticking unique. What can I do with this sticking that I can't do with single strokes? Because let's be honest, if you're just going to be playing straight 16th notes on the snare drum, it doesn't really matter if you're playing the paradiddle or if you're playing single strokes. This is going to sound the same as this. The first and most obvious advantage that the paradiddle has over just straight alternated sticking is that it incorporates double strokes. Single strokes are inherently boring to listen to on their own. If you were to take your hand, split them between two different drums, and just play single strokes, it would sound kind of basic. Obviously, you would almost never do this, but the double strokes in the paradiddle give it an inherent syncopation that just makes it more interesting to listen to on its own. You can get this kind of syncopation with single strokes, but there are just a ton of voicings that are way easier with the paradiddle. That's just one advantage that this particular sticking has over single strokes. Another advantage of the paradiddle, which might not seem as immediately obvious, is that it alternates its lead hand. I, like most drummers, tend to lead exclusively with my right hand, and this can make certain motions pretty difficult. Let's say, for instance, I'm trying to play a really basic one-bar fill, just straight 16th notes around the kit. I only have two toms, so let's say on beat 4, I want to go back to the snare drum. So what I'm trying to play is just 4 on the snare, 4 on the tom, 4 on the floor, and then back to 4 on the snare. The movement going from floor tom to snare drum involves this weird crossover that you kind of have to adjust your arms for. Or instead of doing it with single strokes, you can just go around the kit using paradiddles, because this motion is a lot easier and more fluid than this motion. So, keeping all these ideas in mind, I've attached a worksheet in the description featuring some of my favorite paradiddle voicings around the drum set. This worksheet builds on a lot of the stuff that we covered in the last video, like placing accents off of the downbeats and playing paradiddles in different subdivisions. If you haven't checked that video out yet, again, I highly recommend you do. We're going to take this first exercise at 90 BPM. Don't forget to practice it at much faster tempos, much slower tempos, and all the tempos in between. Here we go. We've covered a lot of ground as far as moving our hands around, figuring out different ways to voice the paradiddle, but something that we should be doing with every idea and every sticking combination that we come up with is incorporating our feet. Oftentimes when we learn new stickings, we're focusing solely on our hands. I mean, they're called stickings after all. But if we're trying to voice these stickings around the kit in as many different ways as possible, we're seriously limiting ourselves by neglecting two of the most distinctive voices at our disposal, the kick drum and the hi-hat. So for a simple sticking like the paradiddle, an easy way to incorporate your feet would just be to replace one of your hands with one of your feet. For instance, instead of playing right, left, left, right, left, left, you might replace your right hand with your right foot, in which case you would then be playing kick, left, kick, left, left. And to that end, this next exercise we're going to do will incorporate all four of our limbs, both hands and both feet. Just like the last one, don't forget to practice it at fast tempos, slow tempos. We're going to take this one at 90 BPM. Here we go. Awesome. Hopefully what these two exercises have done for you is they've given you some creative strategies that you can apply to whatever stickings you want, whatever stickings you know. When you learn something new, try to think about what makes that pattern unique, what makes it useful. And with that in mind, experiment with different places you can move your hands, different directions you can move around the kit. The two exercises we've done today are just a small sample of the different ways you can orchestrate a paradiddle around the kit. I picked some of the ones that I thought were the most useful and that sounded the best to me, but the more you experiment, the more you try new things, the more you're going to find things that work for you. And definitely experiment with the ideas we covered in the last video. Start adding more accents in different places, start shifting between subdivisions. At this point, we've given you a lot of different ideas that should really expand what's possible with an idea. Once again, if you want access to the whole series and a lot more content, I definitely recommend you subscribe to the Patrick and Friends Music Company Patreon. But that's it for this week's lesson. Make sure to practice all the things that we talked about today, and I will see you in the next video.